Welcome back, guys. Thanks for checking out today's video. I just want to say thanks. It seems like you guys really enjoyed that last video about the intake air comparison testing, and there was tons of positive comments and lots of likes. So I thought I would do a bonus intake air comparison test video. The car is still on the dyno. I haven't unstrapped it. It still has the crazy long 3-inch intake on it that I put together. And before I get around to taking everything apart and doing the throttle body testing, which I've got sort of set up over here, I figured maybe we'll test out a couple of the intake setups that I didn't get around to the other day. Some of you guys noticed that I have a K-tuned 3-inch velocity cone filter that I didn't get around to testing, and some of you were disappointed that I didn't get around to testing the K&N Typhoon intake. So I figured I would test out those two intake configurations today, as well as something that I see sometimes where guys come to the dyno and they don't have any sort of filter on whatsoever. Sometimes they'll just have a filter on the end of the throttle body, or they'll have nothing at all and just an open throttle body. So why don't we test no intake system at all, just open throttle body, and see how that affects the power. So I don't know, let's see how that goes. Hopefully you guys are interested in checking out this bonus footage before I get to the throttle body comparison test video. So why don't I get started and let's see how it goes. All right, guys, so I did the 3 pulls to set today's new baseline, and I'm glad I did because today is about 10 degrees Celsius colder, and the car made more power. Today, nothing has changed about the car. It is running the exact same tune it was running the other day. I didn't even unstrap the car. It is strapped down exactly the same as it was the other day. The intake was not removed, it's still on, and because it's about 10 degrees colder today, it has made more power. What I have up here is in orange or yellow, the power that it made the other day, which was Friday. Today is Monday. It made its best pull with the long tube header was 215. Today, the 3 pulls were 217, 217, 216. I just thought I would share that part, that how the weather has affected today's results, and why it's always a good idea to try to do comparisons on the same day. So all that being said, today is for fun. It is a bonus little video. I am going to now put the velocity stack filter on this setup and see if this filter will make any difference compared to the filter that's on there right now. So I'm going to switch out this filter and see how it performs. Okay, and here it is. The velocity stack style filter is on. This is a 3-inch velocity stack, and I believe it's 5-inch for the actual outside diameter of the velocity stack. So it's on. Why don't I do some pulls and see how this affects the power. All right, guys, so I ended up doing 3 pulls with this velocity stack style filter, and interesting results. Up on the screen, I have the 2 best pulls, one with the regular style filter and one with the velocity stack filter. The red one is with the regular filter, and the blue one is the velocity stack. And I am very surprised. basically almost exactly the same horsepower, 217, and almost exactly the same torque. The lines are almost identical except for this area where with this specific engine, we are seeing all kinds of different results and the way the graphs look based on what we're doing with the intake system. In this case, the velocity stack seems to have emphasized it in the beginning portion of it, but it then lost a whole bunch afterwards. So interesting results. I thought the velocity stack may have helped up top and may have actually like flattened this out, but it really didn't. So nonetheless, these are the results. I'm sharing them with you and I think they're interesting. But that's it for this style filter. Why don't I switch up to the K&N Typhoon style filter and see how it performs. All right guys, so I have the K&N Typhoon intake installed. It is slightly different than the AEM one, whereas the piping is about the same size, 2.5 inch diameter, but it does have the benefit of a heat shield sort of that encompasses the air filter. So I'm gonna close the hood for this pull. We'll do 2 or 3 pulls and see how the car performs with this intake. Alright guys, so I ended up doing 2 pulls with the K&N Typhoon intake, and what I have it up here against is the AEM short ram intake. So AEM short ram intake from 3 days ago is in red, making 203 horsepower and 152 foot-pounds torque, and today's runs of the K&N Typhoon short ram intake, 210 and 156, call it, torque. And they are slightly different. The Typhoon makes consistently more power up top. Now, is that because the weather is colder today, or is it because it's a better intake design? The only way for me to answer this question is to throw the AEM back on and do a couple pulls with it so we can have definitive results, whether or not it was the weather that caused this difference or the intake design is better on the K&N versus the AEM. So let's do that. All right guys, AEM is back installed. Let's do a couple pulls and see how the results are today with the AEM short ram. Alright guys, so I've ended up doing 2 pulls with the K&N Typhoon intake and 2 pulls with the AEM short ram intake. And so it appears the K&N Typhoon is the better intake when it comes to short ram intakes. The K&N Typhoon intake is in red and blue, and it ended up putting back-to-back 210 wheel horsepower, and the AEM intake is in green and orange, and it ended up putting down 204 and 205. So the Typhoon definitely must have a slightly better design, or it flows a little bit better because it ended up making a little bit more peak power and a little bit more torque, peak torque in this range here. But ultimately neither of these filters will perform as good as a larger diameter 3-inch or 3.5-inch short ram intake. Okay, so all these tests being done, I think it's time just to have some fun and do a run with no filter system on it at all. So why don't I take off this AM and I'll show you what I mean. All right guys, so I've removed the air filter system and I have just an open throttle body. This is the stock Civic Si K20Z3 throttle body, and you do have to keep the mass airflow sensor, which is the air temperature sensor, attached. So I have it positioned sort of here right in front of the throttle body so it can pick up accurate air temperature of the air that the engine's sucking in. And I'm gonna close the hood and we're gonna see how this performs. Alright guys, so up on the screen I have two runs. In red I have the best run of the day, which was the long 3-inch tubing with the regular K-tuned filter. And in blue I have the run with no filter, no tubing, no anything on it, just open throttle body. And no big surprise, it is the worst run of the day. It ended up putting down only 202 wheel horsepower and 149 foot-pounds torque. And that was just kind of an experiment to show you worst case scenario and what not to do. All that being said, in my previous video, the last video, what I was trying to emphasize is generally large diameter, longer tube intake systems that are cold air will get you the best results. And I think I've done a reasonable job sharing that. We could go down all kinds of rabbit holes and try all kinds of different scenarios, and realistically every car is slightly different, but what I wanted to give you was a general idea of what would normally work. So all that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. I think I'm done with intakes, and the next video is going to be on throttle bodies. And when I do the throttle body test, I am going to use the K-tuned 3.5-inch cold air setup in its proper configuration, and I have 4 throttle bodies to test. I have well, the original throttle body on, but this is the same. This is a stock K20Z3 8th gen Civic Si throttle body. I also have a J35 throttle body. I also have a ZDX throttle body, and I have a K-tuned 72mm throttle body. So I'm just getting ready. I've started porting the intake manifold a little bit. I basically have a long way to go. I have to remove all the material so that there is no black line, because that is the amount of material that needs to be removed so that the throttle bodies are not hindered by the small opening in the intake manifold. So I'm going to continue working away, getting this test all set up and ready to go so that I can perform this comparison test. I'm looking forward to doing it. I'm really interested in seeing the results. I hope you guys are too. So thanks again for watching this video. If you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, and I will continue making this content. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you again soon. Bye now.